there's stuff now trays. There's now trays. Perfect.
Can you what? Yes. Thanks.
You just said you don't know what to do with it.
Okay, ready? This is a good one. I know you didn't really say.
Did you get the homework?
We got you.
I thought you maybe you did. No, you didn't get it? Okay, sorry.
I hate celery. It's gross. I don't know. I don't like it.
It's just like water. How can it offend you so much?
Celery is actually
Yeah.
You don't know how I'm annoyed.
Celery is very like fibrous.
I told her no.
This is your warm up. Let's get going on this, please. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Tonight? Why? Are you like leaving early? No, you don't have to do it yet. Which part? No, let's do Friday. Yeah. Which part don't you get? I don't know if those topics are though.
Oh wait.
So I can tell you if we've like gone over them or if we're going to. So we haven't done that yet. We'll do it tomorrow. That's one of the sections. Oh, okay. That's just like the summary quiz and like that stuff up above it. Okay. What else? Oh, congrats. Hold on. My two equations don't match. Like the one I wrote and the one I typed are different. Here, do that. Sorry about that. So this is the way we got to. We're doing them like today and tomorrow. And I think
Because we did residuals yesterday.
we didn't do residuals.
what I
That's
do.
why. We'll do it tomorrow. So if you're looking at the con, the con is due Friday. We have not done residuals yet. We have not done influential points yet. We're doing those, like we're starting that today. We're finishing that tomorrow. So you will have that knowledge before the con is due. You just don't yet. But like I think everything else we've talked about, at least a little bit. These square regression lines. We'll do that first. So you guys tell me. So that's y plus mx plus b, right? That's the right way. Which one is the x spot? Which one's the y? That's an b. So you remember you gotta. I didn't really tell you which variable is which, but remember this is always like y equals mx plus b. So what's your x variable? IQ or ACT? IQ, and then ACT is your y variable. That's what you were gonna ask? Okay. The interpret's the important part. I think it's pretty easy to look at it and tell me the slope, tell me the y-intercept. But interpreting it right now, like the way that AP does the instant have you write it and give all the information you need. Go look back in the little note packet we took. The less you look at that, the better. But for now, if you need to, that's cool. The screen is project. I'll try to fix it later. If I try to do it now, it'll probably make it worse. So if I were going through how to interpret the slope for the first one, I would write down rise over run, and then I would write, okay, I know the y variable is ACT, and the x variable is IQ, and that's 0.2 over 1, and then I would start writing down my interpretation. So I would say, for each additional IQ point, remember we expect the ACT to increase by 0.2. You don't have to put it in capital letters, I just try to remind you to put the we expect. If I were to interpret the y-intercept, which variable do we say is 0? IQ or ACT? IQ, the x variable is the one we say is 0, so we would say if IQ were equal to 0, we would expect an ACT score of 2. Fancy this, let's put them in italics and everything. So if the correlation is 0.8, correlation equation is R, right? Correlation tells you R. Percent of variation should tell you what? Should remind you of what? Percent of variation is R squared. So if I give you R and you want R squared, what are you going to do? So you're literally going to do 0.8 to the second. It'd be 0.64 or 64%. I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing there. Does that help for the first one? So either you're checking it or you were stuck, and that kind of gets you bumped a little bit. So go ahead and do the second one. Any questions on the first one? Where'd you get this? Why'd you word it this way? What's going on? I got an ACT score too. What are you trying to say? So go ahead and do the second one. This must be, that's the same thing. I gotta know how to write the hat on the computer, so I'll just write it on my hand. Oh, so it was the headline that made it sound like way more.
It was like another company that tried
Oh, really? They must sell like crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I get for just reading that.
Because my dad reviewed it too.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, like my wife drinks all the time. Didn't seem concerned about that, but yeah. Make sure you see that 0.5 on that one is negative. I don't know what errors I'm really talking about, but the idea, like, the more time you spend, the less errors you'll make. That's what I was going for. Bless you. So again, I would recommend, when you're asked to interpret the slope, just make a little note to yourself and remind yourself what slope is. Rise over run. In this case, errors is your y value and minutes is your x value, and that's negative 0.5 over 1. And this is what you have to describe. You're just doing it in words instead of like a fraction. So you would say, for each additional minute, we would expect errors to decrease. Why does it decrease? It's negative. So I don't think we've done a negative one yet, so that's why I was asking. To decrease by 0.5. Interpret the y-intercept would be if we spent 0 minutes, we would expect how many errors? 10 errors. The number, or part C, I'll be surprised if I got right. We'll look at it in a second. That was like really building the drama. Hello? Okay. So I bet a lot of you got close, but I bet a lot of people missed something on this one. Just say if it's not 0.8, you quit. Is It's not 0.8. Here, let me give you a second to try that. How many have 0.8? It's not 0.8. Take a second and see if you can think about why. I'll give you a second before I tell you what it is. It's not 0.8. Don't stop your words from coming out of your word hole, please. She already ruined it. Never mind. All right. So, percent of variation should remind you of R squared. So that should tell you R squared is 0.64. How do you go in correlation? So correlation is just regular R, right? So how do you go from R squared to R? You're going to square root it. Thing is, that could mean 0.8 or negative 0.8 because there's technically two square roots, right? So are we going to use the positive or the negative one in this case, and why? We use the negative one because there's a negative slope. So remember, if your slope is going down, your R is negative. So if that were a positive 0.5, your R would be 0.8. I bet a lot of you put 0.8 because you just hit the square root and you're like, oh, I think I'm good. That's a really good step. It's just that one little extra thing, like if your slope is negative, your R has to be negative also. I mean, we haven't talked about that. That's a pretty tricky one. Does that make sense why it's negative, though? Questions? All right, take out that packet we've been working with. All the L1s and L2s and all that. Through the end of the movie.
No, I work in a movie theater. I would be tired if I did that.
You just did that.
I work in a movie.
Well,
Better
yeah,
than
you
the movie.
It's okay, I don't like that job. I don't get enough hours.
We should be pretty good by then.
How do I songs?
Alright, so we have done most of this, but not all. Go to explanatory variable in the back. Explanatory variable is the x value. It is the input. Shh. It's what we use to predict or explain. So it's kind of the starting point. Like I tell you this, and then we're going to try to predict that. So it's the thing I tell you, or the thing we start with. If you have a table, it's always x with x and y's. The x is always on top. If you have one that goes like vertically, the x is always on the left. And then response is just the opposite of all that. So explanatory, x value. It's pretty easy to remember, I think. And then response is y value. It's the output. It's what gets predicted or explained. So in that IQ and ACT, which one was the explanatory variable, IQ or ACT score? The explanatory variable. Be IQ, because like I tell you the IQ and we're going to try to predict your ACT score. In the minutes and errors one, which one is the response variable? It'll be errors, right? Because like I tell you how many minutes we spent, and I'm going to use that to try to predict how many errors there were. Alright? So that's just kind of vocabulary. It's not that big a deal, but I've seen it on the AP test a couple times. The one I really want to talk about is describing data. So back here. If you are describing for one variable, what was the acronym that we used to remind us what to do for that? SOX. Shape, outlier, center, spread. That's if I have one variable. That was like in chapter 1 and 2. But now we have two variables. So like IQ and ACT, or shoe size and height. If I'm describing data for two variables, it doesn't make a word, unfortunately. But what they want is form, direction, and strength. FDS. And so I'll give you the kind of the options for each one of those. So for one variable, it's socks. That's the same stuff we learned before. That's what you would do if you had just a list of data. But if you have two lists, now you got to give me the, you would make like a scatter plot thing like we've been doing, and give me the form, direction, and strength. Strength, we've talked about. What are your options there? Strong, moderate, weak. Direction, we've talked about. What are your options there? That's what whoever just said. Positive or negative. So that's positive or negative. And form is basically linear or nonlinear. So linear means it makes a line. Nonlinear means it's just kind of a blob. Alright, go to the first one. I believe we've done everything on there except for this bottom part. So if you're looking at the information, what you did on number 1, what's the form there? Linear or nonlinear? Linear. Direction. Positive. Strength. Strong. So I'm kind of guiding you through that. They wouldn't say what's the form, what's the direction, what's the strength. They would say like describe the data. If I were to describe the data, I've got to tell them these 3 things plus one other thing. What's the one other thing? Not outliers. That's for one variable. Context. I got to tell them context. So I'd have to say something like the relationship between, what was this one? Midterm and final is linear, positive, strong. So if they were grading that, they'd look for 4 things. Linear, positive, strong, context. Always context, always context. Questions on that? Alright, I'm confused on the classes again. Have you guys done like the line, the equation and stuff for number 2? You don't have the line? Do you have the equation?
You just told us we didn't have the draw.
Here's the drawing. Describe that. So go to the bottom where it says describe the scatter plot. Do that. Did I give you that it's toppings and cost?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. No. It doesn't matter what order you do them in. FDS could be DSF, DFS, SFD, SD, whatever. So I'm just going to phrase this one the opposite way. So the relation, no wait, that's what I did last time. There is a linear, positive, strong relationship between toppings and cost. Or you could have said the relationship between toppings and cost is linear, positive, and strong. And these three things, it doesn't matter what order. You can say there's a strong, linear, positive, whatever. The order here doesn't make a difference. Questions there? Alright, so number 3, I believe you guys haven't done it all yet, right? No equation, no graph, no nothing. So do the whole thing. This is like, put it all together. We've talked about everything on there. Do what you can. Ideally, do without looking. Like, do as much as you can without looking back at the notes. If you need to look back, but try to see what you can do without. Yeah. Oh, I didn't give you those yet? So that's temperatures in Milan and temperatures in Toronto. Again, so I mean, you're doing everything on there. Try to do it without looking. That'd be great. If you can't, then you got to look, and that's fine because we just learned this stuff. But do as much as you can from memory. See where you're at. We do have a short lesson left to do also, so I'll give you probably 10, 15 minutes for this. Don't start this yet, I'm just messing it up. The answers are up here. If you want to come check them, I'll leave them up here, right here, and then I'll put them up there in a minute. But I don't want to like ruin the movie, you know. And that thing I just handed out is the reading computer printout. That's that section. So talk about that before you guys leave.
Is there a way you can do a monitor for like the strings and stuff like that? But how do I know if it's
Like where the cutoff is.
yeah.
They're pretty generous. So like if you put strong there, it'd be wrong.
Yeah.
But as long as you put moderate or weak, I think you're okay.
I don't know.
You could even say like if you want to be, you could say moderately weak if you want to like compromise it.
Okay.
But they're not gonna nitpick that much.
Okay. So when we do this test, as long as like it's not like
So there's like 3 things as long as you're within one thing. I'd say. That makes sense.
yeah.
Switch one.
The Milan in Toronto.
Over slow. Did you do the like right out the Y Rex?
Oh, Toronto's.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Number 2, if there's a list like this, like that, 'cause it's always on top.
In that calculator, it says, oh, no. I didn't see the negative. For R, are we talking about that one? Yeah, but I didn't see the negative. That is really hard. Especially because I couldn't.
How small is this thing? You're just not used, because that's the first one we've done, I think, where it's been negative. So I think you're
Yeah, I
just
was,
not
like,
used to
looking
like
for it.
looking. Yeah.
Would we get more fun if we put? Because I just did 0.08 and I said 8%.
I don't think so, but I think I would always like err on the side of put more decimals if you're not sure than less, you know. Because the AP test, I think I told you guys, they say round it where it makes sense, which is like such a stupid useless. But I'd always put extras if I'm not sure.
The thing with Khan Academy that really makes me mad is I'll do like, and the answer will be like 8.5 or like 0.85, like, or 0.085, and they're like round up to like a percent, and I'm like, do I do 9 or do I do 8? And they're like, oh, it's 9, but for some of them they do 8, and I'm like,
So it should be like 5 or higher, you round up. It's not.
for some it is, but some it's not, and I'm like, for percent it's up, and then for like, for
I'd have to
decimals
see
it's
it,
down.
I guess. Really?
Yeah, it's the worst thing ever, because I'm like, that's the reason why I got a lot of like the summer work on, because I would round
Like
down
rounding
on some
stuff.
level, yeah, and then round up on some level. I'm like, what is this shit?
So here's the graph. I can't really show the graph and the answers all at once, but there's the graph. So realize when it says sketch, it's just means sketch. Like, it doesn't have to be a super detailed thing. I mean, you can see mine. I didn't even put labels or anything. It's just like sketch to get a kind of an idea of what it looks like. And then here's my answers. So check what you have. Make sure you have. I mean, basically what I have. You can phrase it a little differently, but you should have all the things I have. So is that big enough that people in the back see that? Okay. So things I could see people, make sure you put the hat on the Toronto. Make sure you have Toronto as the Y, Mount as the X. Make sure you label them so you give me context there. Make sure you put we expect for the slope and we expect for the y-intercept. Those are kind of the main errors that I could see. Any questions on any of the wording on any of that? Were you about to ask something? Okay. 1, 2. Is anybody still looking at it? Like, you want me to leave it up so you can write it? Okay. Okay. And then get out the other thing that I gave you. I want to show you how to read the computer printout stuff. Anything here I can help with? I'll leave it up for a second too. I'm just making sure there's no questions.
Different numbers, I don't know why. So.
You must have the numbers in around. So go ahead. -5, -3, -1, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay, and then 10, -8, 15.
Oh.
Yeah, so that'll throw everything off,
Okay,
you know.
but I checked them just against like, if I had the right things in the right places, so my numbers on that are wrong, but I checked the wording and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's when you type one thing in, and that works. So you can do the wording. That's cool. Okay, so look at this, please. So the packet I just gave you, this first problem here.
Why is that?
Why
Why
is
wouldn't it be positive and linear? Why is it negative and non-linear?
it's negative because it's going
Oh,
down.
I got it positive.
Your slope was positive.
I got the line as positive.
my slope
Well,
was negative.
well, then your line should be negative. I bet it was
I don't
graphing an
know.
old line.
I don't know. I clicked graph after everything.
You gotta put the equation in though. So it was probably the equation you put in last time. Does that help you then?
I did the same
Okay.
exact-
What?
I did the same exact-
Okay. Alright. So, this is the I think it's called a computer printout or something. Reading computer output. One of those. Also on the AP Testament, that's why it's on there. So what they do is they give you this printout from this random statistical software, and they want you to know how to read it. Let me know when you guys are all set here. We're good? Okay, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was rude of me. Yeah. You can cross off this, the R squared adjusted, and the S. You will never use those. This whole thing is weird to me. They give you this computer printout. There's like 100 different stats softwares you can use, and they all have little different ways they show you the numbers. They're like, we're going to choose this one and make sure everyone knows how to read this one. Which, I mean, I guess, I don't know, whatever. Alright, so, the equation of a line is mx plus b, right? This b is called the y-intercept. It's also called a constant. It's just a number. It's just like the number that's being added to the other part, to the mx part. That's what this is right here. When they tell you constant, they are telling you, hey, this is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept of this line is negative 2.679. The amount, if you look at the graph, the amount is on the x-axis, right? Your amount is the x variable. The coefficient of that, so the number that's next to that, they're trying to tell you that that number is the slope. I always feel like I'm terrible at explaining this because it doesn't even make any sense. Like, it's just, here's this random thing, show people how to use it. But this is all it is. So they're giving you, the constant that they give you is the y-intercept, so that goes there. X is the amount, and then that's the number next to the x. So the equation that they are trying to tell you here is y equals 9.5x minus 2.679. That's just the numbers. Like, I know I'm not done with it. But do you see where I'm getting the numbers from, at least? Like, how that kind of matches up? But what do I still need to do if I wanted to write the equation correctly? I'm missing two things. Context, so I'd have to say x equals amount, and y equals, it's like the height of the suds, because of course it is. And what else am I missing? I'm missing the hat. The sun is in my eyes. So, like, that's it. That's really what we're going to practice it 2 more times, because there's a couple on the back, but that's really what I want to show you. This number up here is the y-intercept. The number on the bottom is the slope. And this isn't, like, I know a second ago I told you, if you have a chart like that, x is on top, y is on the bottom, but that's if you have, like, a list of data. This is not a list of data. This is computer printout from who knows what software it is. But go to the back and try to do that first one. Write the least squared regression line for the one on top with the brain weight and body weights. Nobody sits there, right? Or does someone sit there? Trey, but he's here. Yeah. Yeah, Iverson's here at a meeting, and those two are empty. Alright. I try. Alright, so same idea. Constant is the y-intercept. Body weight's your x variable. That's going to be your slope. So you're going to go y equals 1.095 x plus 68.688. And then put the hat on and go, okay, x equals body weight. And y equals brain weight. And then from there, I could do whatever else I wanted to. You know, I could ask you a bunch of questions about that, which you'll do in the homework. Yeah?
It's 68.6.
Better? Thanks. I'm going to add that. Like, I don't care about the 688 or 88, whatever, but okay, questions? Questions on how to get the equation? Do the one on the bottom. One more. Is that small for you guys to see, or am I just blind? Like, I think that's written so tiny. So just write the LSRL, that's all I... Your homework is going to be to do the front page and the back page. Like, finish everything else on there. So tomorrow I'll walk around and check it. If you want to be eligible for a retake or corrections or whatever it is, I need to see this done. Front page, back page is your homework. So finish the entire front page and back page is your homework. Finish the entire front page and back page is your homework. Your homework is to finish the entire front page and the back page. Your homework front page is back page, do. Yeah.
Is it both sides of each page?
No. Just like the very outside covers. So this one literally tells you, this is your y-intercept, this is your slope. So it's a little more straightforward even. In this one, so y hat equals 0.53x plus 10.53. X equals books. That is y equals pounds, right, I think? Yeah, like pounds of the backpack. Alright, so, again, finish everything else on the front page and the back page. That's your homework. Don't forget your cons due Friday. We've talked about everything except two things. We're going to do those tomorrow. Questions for me? Same con as on before. I just assigned it way before I taught it, was the thing. Yeah, I decided to skip a week of school. Kind of threw things off a little bit, but